All right, I think we are live. Let me double check. Dukes, can you confirm that we're live?
We're alive.
All right, cool. All right, everyone, welcome to the first edition of Back Cuts. I'm going to keep it simple. We'll talk about the show as a whole here real quick before we get into today. What I wanted to do is obviously talk about college basketball. The plan is 2 times a week. Be Tuesdays and Thursdays going forward. Obviously, this week's a little different. Opening day here on Monday. Had to talk about it. And then this week we'll probably go Friday because Friday's the best slate of games this week. The plan is myself. Yeah, I had invited Rico to be on. He wasn't ready to talk about college basketball or something along those lines just yet. This isn't anything against Round Ball. Those guys are welcome to come on if they want. I hope their podcast does well. This is just me trying to talk gambling, best bets, everything along those lines, and just the sport as a whole. Plan is 30-minute, 45-minute max shows a day. As we get past football, we'll go more often, look at adding some weekend shows. But the show's premise is simple. It's basically what Brandon Walker does, just with a better looking guy and a guy that cheers for a better team than Brandon does. Kentucky should be in the national title contending every single year, unlike Mississippi State football. But this is a show for people. So I want to interact, YouTube chat, Twitter questions, whatever. That's what we're going to do. We'll talk about anything and everything. I live and breathe this sport, high major, mid major, low major. So today we're going to get into it. Obviously, first day of games. Dukes, I have a complaint. I want you to hear my first complaint. I'm gonna have one complaint a show. I'm allowed one complaint a show. I love that there's 100 games today. I fucking despise the fact there's not a marquee game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, what are you looking at? The best game today, I think, is probably Chattanooga, Charleston. That's what I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, Chattanooga, Charleston. I think probably Vandy, Memphis is the best game. Mm-hmm. But nothing's on ESPN. Everything's on ESPN Plus. FS1 is a couple games. SEC Network, I think, has a game or two. But what are we doing? And I understand election days tomorrow. That's why Champions Classic is pushed back. But we used to always get 4 to 5 marquee games opening night. Remember, the ACC used to do regular season games on opening night? Give me that back. As dumb as that is, I'll watch Louisville, Miami. I mean, I'm going to watch all the sport. Casual fans will tune into Louisville, Miami because they see the names. That's my complaint of the day. I have more complaints, but that one complaint a day, that's what I'm allowed. That's my complaint for opening day.
I got to be honest, though. I mean, if we're looking at it from a college basketball gambling perspective, I think gamblers get a little bit a little bit excited looking at these Baylor, Mississippi Valley State games. You look at these big spreads. It's a tradition like any other.
There's some ugly spreads out today, and that's what's beautiful about opening day. And the fact that there's 363 college basketball teams, you're going to get ugly spreads. You're going to get 35-point spreads multiple times throughout the season. So I want to start with some future bets because that's what people look at. Obviously, we'll get into best bets for the day and everything like that. But future bets, that's what we're going to focus on to start this episode. Dukes, I have a handful. I have my sheet. I do handwritten notes because I'm old. I'm going to start with the Wooden Player of the Year. And I'm not taking Oscar Tshiebwe. Marcus Sasser, 15-1 on the Barstool Sportsbook. Houston guard, averaged 17 a game last year, played 12 games. He is the guy that's going to be Houston's go-to guy. Houston is a top 5 team in the country. The biggest question will be, will he have enough marquee games that voters go, oh, yeah, that guy? I think he should be a unanimous All-American. Marcus Sasser, 15-1 is my favorite Wooden Award. And I know people say, oh, that's kind of chalky. I don't think you need to go 20 deep in the Wooden Award.
I don't think it's chalky at all. I tend to agree where my two picks going into it would probably be Sasser. I totally agree with you on that. I'm very high on Houston this year. There are, on the Barstool Sportsbook, I saw them at minus 330 to win the AAC, and I think that might be too low. I think it might be the lock of the century that they win the AAC. There's no value there, really.
No, there's not.
They will not lose that conference. And I'm betting them to make the Final Four national championship. I'm all over this Houston team. But yeah, I think Tshiebwe could repeat National Player of the Year. Do you have any dark horse picks besides if you're going to even say is there anybody that like an Obi Toppin out there, somebody that if their team does really well, his, that narrative starts getting pushed.
I have a guy, but it's a freshman, so it's really not Obi Toppin-esque. He's a freshman that I have. We're going to go into my 5 takes for the season later on in the episode. But if you're looking at a guy that could, I guess, technically come out of nowhere, even though he's a 5-star, even though he's McDonald's All-American, even though he plays for Baylor, who's a top 5 team in the country, Keontae George is fucking awesome. And I didn't look to see what his odds are. I know Baylor runs that multiple guard look, and you have Adam Flagler and like those guys back, but like Keontae George should be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. If he lives up to the hype, Baylor's going to be a 1 seed, perhaps the number 1 seed, because that's my future bet. Baylor plus 250 to win the Big 12. Yeah, they're the favorite, but you're getting plus money on them. I also like that it's a round robin, so you're getting all their home games against Kansas, against Texas, against Texas Tech. They're 16-1 to win the title, and they're plus 350 to make a Final Four. I'm doing that across the board.
I really like this Baylor team, and also they got Jalen Bridges from West Virginia, who I think is a stud. I think Baylor is going to be one of those teams where people are like, oh no, they kind of lost some key pieces. They lost to UNC last year in the tournament. Can Scott really bring them back? But Baylor's one of those programs where they're going to put up 50 points or win by 50 today at noon. And everyone's going to that's really good.
They tip off against Mississippi Valley State today. Yeah, I think the line's 41.5 on the Barstool Sportsbook.
I would take it at 50.5.
That what people don't realize, and now the one complaint against Baylor is JTT's hurt. He's missing part of the season. Mm-hmm. They need him back because he is way better at what he does in Flo Thamba. But they also bring back Langston Love, who missed all last year. He was another 5-star guy.
Yep.
Like they're just loaded, and you can't even say like, oh, Scott Drew, he won a title. They were a 1 seed a year ago. They are, everyone wants to debate blue blood and all that shit. In terms of like 2022, Baylor's as premier of a program as they're in that group of premier programs, I should say. They're not as premier as everyone else. They're in that group of the Kentuckys, the Kansas, the UNCs, the Dukes,
New Bloods.
Gonzaga, yeah. But it's a combo, right? Like Gonzaga is kind of a new blood. I know they haven't won a title, but let's be honest, like they've made 2 title games.
Exactly.
They were Nigel Williams-Goss ankle away from probably beating UNC. Mm-hmm. They got their ass kicked by Baylor, which further proves my point about Baylor. So if you're looking for, and there's a stat, I think Heat Check had it. I put it in my blog for my futures. The last 6 titles have come from Ken Palm's preseason top 5. I'm just trying not to overthink it this year. I know everyone likes to have like that 100-1, that 80-1. If you want value, look at Final Four bets. Like Florida 17-1, Miami 20-1 to make a Final Four. Only got to win 4 versus 6. We've seen 11 seeds get there. We've seen 8 seeds get there. We see mayhem in the tournament. If you want value, Florida, Miami at those odds to make a Final Four and not have to win the whole damn thing makes more sense than like 100-1 for them to win it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The Final Four versus the national championship bet, the odds change drastically. I mean, if you're looking at a team in the top 5 of Ken Palm that I think can turn people's heads, let's talk about Virginia.
I'm so fucking Jake Malasek.
Yeah.
Man. I'm so out on Virginia this year. Like, listen, they're going to be better. They were, I think, 81st or 71st in Ken Palm last year. I know they bring back everybody. I know Kihei Clark, who's like the captain of my how the hell are they still in college?
Yeah.
He's still there. Gardner's like a really good player. Tony Bennett's a hell of a coach. I'm not knocking them, but to make the jump from where they were finished last year to saying like, I know Ken Palm has them preseason top 5 this year, which is fucking insane. But isn't it more realistic to say like they're a top 30 team?
Yeah, but would you not say that if you're going off the presumption, okay, I'm going to trust Ken Palm that the national champions in the top 5, and then you're going to look at Virginia, who's the 5th best team. He's putting above Baylor,
which is. So I'm trying to trust my brain here and combine it with like Ken Palm.
Look, I've always had this take about Virginia too. I've had this take about Virginia for a while too, that they might not have ever the most talented teams, but that Tony Bennett is a well-oiled machine. He knows how to get them going. He knows exactly how to beat the Dukes, the UNCs. So plus 700 Virginia to win the ACC. I love just value-wise, because really, if you look at it, like Hubert Davis, right? The UNC run in the tournament is great, but you could potentially, I'm not saying it, but you could potentially say, was that fluky? People
say it.
that's a
I'll
narrative
say
that's
it.
out there. Yeah.
It's
So
my narrative. I'm the one running with this as much as anyone.
yeah.
So in the YouTube chat, Klee112 just says Juve is not winning the ACC. They can't score. There is some truth to that. Now, like the biggest lie was that Virginia couldn't score prior to like last year. They could always score. They just played fucking slow. That's why they looked like they couldn't score. Now, what I did is real quick, I just put up their schedule because ACC, and this is what pisses me off and what you have to look at when you're betting conference champions. Pardon me, is who do they have at home? Who do they have double? And I'm looking really quick to see they only play Duke once, and that game is in Charlottesville. They get Carolina twice, so home and away. Miami, they have once on the road. So out of the top, and Notre Dame is the other team that I think is going to be good in the ACC this year. They have them. Where the hell's Notre Dame is once at home. So they play three. They play Miami, Duke, and Notre Dame just once. They can feast on those lower level teams.
Yep.
So it does make sense. As much as I don't love Virginia, if you don't want to bet Duke or Carolina to win the ACC, you got to look at Miami, Notre Dame, Virginia as the next three options. I'm not that high on Virginia Tech, so I think those are the three. Virginia schedules is one that favors them.
And I think Vanderplas from Ohio, the transfer, I think that he'll be able to provide some points for them. But yeah, it's not so much as I think. I'm not saying I think that Virginia is going to win the ACC. If you ask me that question, I could take anybody at even value. My bet would be on Duke. But if you're telling me that I can grab Virginia at plus 700, a Tony Bennett defense, adding Vanderplas on the offensive end, yeah, I'm going to like Virginia plus 700 to win the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're giving me even odds on anyone, I'm probably going to UNC still. But like I have questions about both Duke and UNC. So I don't hate Virginia. Just moving quickly to some other future bets I have in the same line as Virginia. I think Xavier at 6-1 to win the Big East is intriguing. I think that's really intriguing because Nova's all banged up. I'll touch on that in a little bit because that's part of one of my bets today. Creighton is the favorite. Again, it's like what we're talking about with Virginia. Can they make the jump round robin style so you get everyone at home? They probably won't lose at Omaha. But do they slip on the road? So if just looking at an odd side, I think Xavier at 6-1 is intriguing. And then we have our favorite UAB, Jelly, Andy Kennedy, plus 220 to win Conference USA. They're the favorite, but you get some plus money on them. Jacksonville at plus 270 to win the ASUN. They're the second favorite over behind Liberty. Listen, Liberty is Darius McGee. He's probably going to lead the country in scoring, but I like Jacksonville a lot. Mitzi can really coach. UNC Asheville, 4-1 to win the Big South. I think they're the third best odds. And then the team I like to win the OVC, I think they have the third best odds. Tennessee Martin, 4-1, which is actually one of my favorite underdog bets today. They're catching 11 or 11.5 from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh fucking stinks. Tennessee Parker Stortback, he was at Indiana last year. He's transferring back to UT Martin. He was there. His father tragically passed away. He was the coach at UT Martin when that was there. Mm-hmm. So I like UT Martin 4-1 to win the conference, and I like them. I might sprinkle some money line. I like them catching the 11 or 11.5, whatever the line is right now, against Pitt. Pitt's banged up. Dior Johnson suspended. Jeff Capel stinks. Pittsburgh is a nothing. So if you're giving me double-digit points with a high major guard, I'm going to take that.
Now, when we're talking about the Big East, you're talking about Xavier. I think that one team, I might be falling for the trap again, but one team I've been really looking at is St. John's. I love Posh Alexander, and I want to see how him and Curbelo play in the backcourt.
Mike Anderson's still the coach, man.
I know, and their style of play, I know, and I fell for it last year. But I think that it's worth taking a stab at least. And then another, Providence, could they do it again? I know that they have some problems with KenPom, but the amount of transfers they got, it seems like it's not rebuild, but reload for Ed Cooley.
Yeah, Bryce Hopkins is going to be fucking good there, and it's really going to annoy me with how he could have stayed at Kentucky. And I'm not knocking him for leaving Kentucky by any means. I'll never knock a kid for transferring because I think you should have the right to, but it's going to annoy me how he's good at Providence, and I'm just going to want him back at Kentucky because I thought he was going to be like the prototypical great 3-year college player. I'll touch on another Big East team as we get to my 5-season long takes. But those are my future bets. Again, just run through them real quick. Baylor plus 250 in the Big 12, 16-1 to win the national title, plus 350 for a Final Four. Sasser 15-1 to win the Wooden Award. If you're looking for value, Florida 17-1 for a Final Four, Miami 20-1 for a Final Four. UAB plus 220 in Conference USA, Jacksonville plus 278 Sun, UNC Asheville 4-1. Remember the name Drew Pember. He is one of the best mid-major players in the country. Tennessee Martin 4-1 to win the OVC. Those are all regular season bets too.
I'll run through my futures, I guess, really quick too. I have Dayton plus 200 to win the A10.
Of course you do.
A homer. Virginia plus 700 to win the ACC. I have Houston and Kentucky at plus 900 to win the championship over outright. And then as just a homer bet, I also took Dayton to make the Final Four plus 2,000.
I'm glad you at least took them to make the Final Four because it's just throwing away money if you have them to win the title.
Yeah, I mean, I still bet them to win the title. I'm just not going to give that out, but I really think that Dayton could make the Final Four this year. It just depends on matchups, right? This tournament could get crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we see it every year. There's one more bet that I'm gonna take today. It's Iowa plus 500 to win the Big Ten. I think that Iowa is severely underrated this year. I think Chris Murray or Patrick McCaffrey. Don't be surprised if they win Big Ten Player of the Year, and honestly, don't be surprised if they're in the National Player of the Year at the in the race at the end of the year. Well, the Big 12 is also just all jumbled up, right? Like there's not. I know people are high on Indiana, but there's not like a dominant team in the Big 12.
No, I think it's Illinois or Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about that. Illinois, I don't know how they'll do in the regular season, but I think they figure it out as the year goes on.
Yep.
And then they could be a sneaky, like, hey, I'm putting them in my Elite Eight as like a 5 seed. But my best bet for today, focusing on today's games, there are 100 of them. And I'm doing something I hate to do. I hate taking small road favorites. Hate it, but I have to. Marshall -5 at Queens. Queens is a new Division I program down in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're a damn good Division II team. This isn't like your prototypical, we're making the jump up. They're good. However, their head coach got busted for a DUI, I think, on Friday of last week, like 4 days before the regular season starts. I do not believe he's coaching tonight. Tavion Kinsley from Marshall is a star. He averaged 19, 5, and 4 last year. Sneaky, another guy that could lead the country in scoring. I think he's on that list with like him, Antoine Davis, Max Asmus, and Darius McGee for who could lead the country in scoring. Queens struggles in transition defense. Dan D'Antoni's the coach of Marshall. We know what D'Antoni's do, right? They fucking fly around, threes, layups, play fast. Your first game at home, head coach with all these with his off the court problems. Yeah, the place is going to be like raucous, but I mean Marshall and my guy Jordan Majewski. If you are a diehard college basketball fan, he's Jor Cubsdan on Twitter. He is phenomenal info. The dude is awesome to read. He compared this Queens team to last year's Eastern Kentucky, just not as athletic. Marshall beat the shit out of Eastern Kentucky last year. Marshall returns everybody. They don't lose anybody. And they bring back besides Kinsley, Obinna, Ankanil Killian, top 50 in block rate. They have experienced guards. They bring in Camden Kaufman from VMI, averaged 15 a game last year. Queens loses their leading scorer in Jamari Smith, who averaged 18 a game. So that's my best bet of the day, Marshall -5. You won't typically hear me take small road favorites, but I saw this line and I jumped on it right away.
Any other bets that you have today?
Yeah, so I have the high-low, which is a new bet on the Barstool Sportsbook. You can go to my Twitter. I have the shareable bet slip. Each day, we're going to take one over, one under, parlay it together. Today is a plus 217. It is over 156 in Charleston, Chattanooga. Charleston, second year of Pat Kelsey. They play fast. However, they really, really got destroyed last year in pick and rolls and like short rolls. Well, Chattanooga, new head coach, brings in a guy from VMI, Dan Earl, plays fast, runs pick and roll, brings in his all-conference center, Jake Stevens, to Chattanooga. Stevens might drop like 24 in this game. So I took the over 156. I took the under 139 in Nova LaSalle. 2 first-year coaches, Fran Dunphy, shout out to King of Philly, going to the LaSalle. There's just not a lot of pieces. They don't mesh well. Nova's all sorts of banged up. No Justin Moore, no Cam Whitmore. I saw something that they might be starting Arch's little brother tonight. So that just feels like a slugfest.
Yeah.
My fear is a lot of fouling, right? We got to see how refs call games. So my fear, and Nova's a good free throw shooting team, that could they get to 75 on free, like hitting 21 free throws? Yeah, that's the fear. So we went under 139 there though. So those are my 3 bets today. Now the other ones I'm targeting. I'm watching what happens with Jordan Dingle at Penn. They're catching 8.5 from Iona right now at Iona. I'm really interested. He's been in a boot. He was listed as a starter. Now it's worth noting that sometimes that's not always true. So I'm waiting to see more reports on what happened with Dingle. If he's healthy, I might pull the trigger on Penn plus 8.5. And then I mentioned earlier, UT Martin catching 11.5 from Pitt.
I'll go through my picks really quick. My best bet of the day is Hofstra plus 2 against Princeton. Aaron Estrada, CAA player of the year.
So good.
The way that Hofstra just uses their guards, when they get hot from deep, they can pour it on some teams. This is a good team. Probably a team to watch out for in the CAA to win it all. But that's my best bet is Hofstra plus 2 against Princeton, and then just going through it. I have Dayton minus 31 against Lindenwood. D1 team first time this year. Iowa State minus 30. Baylor, I got them at minus 41. They're at minus 44.5 right now. If you're getting on it right now, I'll take it again just because that's how much confidence I have in Baylor. And then I have Tarleton State.
Shout out Billy G.
Yeah, Billy G, the kid. I'm telling you, Tarleton is going to be like one of those. My hot take is like they'll be the next SF Austin, where they just play all these teams really, really close, and they'll turn into like they'll be like a respectable program in like 2 years, I think, as like a mid.
Yeah, so that was actually the other under I was looking at for my high-low bet, because Gillespie, I mean, I know he was a fucking
plays
best
the
at
folk
Kentucky.
defense.
I know he ruined my college life because I was there. My last few years were the 2 years of Billy G. But the dude knows how to play, like, coach defense. Tarleton just smothers people. So I looked at that as an under, too. I do not hate that bet. I see our guy Scott Newman there said Penn's plus 6.5 now. So I'm thinking Dingle's probably playing. 6.5 is low. Now, Penn matches up well against Iona. And listen, Iona's good. Like, we know Patino, like, that's a coaching mismatch no matter what. So that's worth noting that the line did drop for about 1.5 to 2 points, depending when you looked at it. I like Clee 112 again. Kent State to win the MAC plus 550. Sincere Carey is a fucking dog.
Yep.
Like, he is good. The MAC is open. I think you have Akron, like John Grossi. I know he sucked at Illinois. Awesome at Ohio. I think the dude just knows how to coach in the MAC. He's at Akron now. I think Toledo is another team that can win the MAC.
Yes.
That, in terms of like mid-majors to watch, the MAC, I know we talk about MAC football a lot. That's beloved at Barstool. But MAC basketball is fucking awesome too.
It is.
So,
it is.
And you have like throwing Imani Bates there this year too, right? Like,
It's insane to think about. I saw him like he's like in like the top 20 for odds to win Player of the Year.
Yeah, because what if he just remembers how good he is?
Yeah, and that's the player. That is probably the player that we're like, who's the OB Toppin? Like that could be the OB Toppin that plus 8,000 that can win the National Player of the Year. I mean, it's not.
Now my fear is obviously he's not good, or the fact that he just doesn't, or the fact that he just doesn't have the marquee games. And that's what I'm battling with Sasser is Bates going to be on TV enough? Now, obviously he's the name, right? Like Sasser, college basketball fans know Marcus Sasser. Everybody fucking knows Imani Bates because he was the first sophomore to ever win Gatorade National Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I could see him winning MAC Player of the Year. I could see him sneaking onto some All-Americans if he remembers how to play basketball. Again, that's a legit question. And
excited for him to play Michigan. Him against Michigan will be a good test. But then my last two bets of the day. My last 2 bets of the day, I have LaSalle plus 15.5, like you said, and then George Mason plus 12.5 against Auburn. I'm not really sure what to make of Auburn this year. Can't really get
no chance Westry in that game too, I believe, for Auburn, which is big.
Yeah, and I think just A10 bias probably a little bit. I think Josh Odoro is a beast, quite frankly. So yeah, those are my bets today. I mean, we'll see how it goes today because day one you really don't know what teams are like. You're kind of just going off of last year, what you think. So should be good.
Well, that again, refereeing is so important when we talk about gambling here, especially like over and unders. Is okay. What is going to be the thing they target early on? Every year there's something, hand checks, 3 seconds, whatever it might be. I know this year there's like you can get a technical for flopping without a warning.
So
So it's like that. I mean, I do like the George Mason bet without Westry, and they bring in Victor Bailey from Tennessee, who spent time with why the hell am I blank? Kim English at Tennessee when he was assistant there.
Yes.
So there is some familiarity when you and I'm a big fan of like the high transfer that goes to a mid major. Like that works out probably 75% of the time.
Yeah, LaSalle had it. LaSalle has it right now. I think they like Josh
Nickelberry.
Yeah,
from Louisville.
Yeah.
All right. Segment I want to do real quick. My 5 season long takes, which I'm sure will. I'm going to grade them as the season goes and see how I do. I'm saying this now on November 8th. Number 1, the Big Ten does not have a title contender. I mentioned it earlier. It feels bunched up. They have a lot of like 20 to 35 ranked teams. They have, I think like Penn State's a sleeper. I think Illinois could get hot. Iowa's a little underrated. Indiana's better this year. Obviously, they have an All-American, Trace Jackson Davis. And a 5-star coming in. I still question, can Xavier Johnson be Xavier Johnson the entire year? How good is Hood-Schifino when the entire year? Like there still is a transition period, even for 5-stars, unless you're talking about the Zions, the RJs, the Anthony Davises of the world. Who the hell's a national title contender out of the Big Ten? I don't think there is one.
There's not one right now. I think the biggest flop in the Big Ten, it could obviously be Indiana. Everyone's very high on them. I even picked them to make the Final Four because I think I'm a big Trace Jackson Davis guy. Obviously, I think Race Thompson is one of the more underrated players in the country for what he can do as just like a glue guy for them. But yeah, I mean, this is what, year 3 or 4 with this core group. I mean, they can't get it together this year. But Miller Kopp, I think, is the X factor for Indiana. If they want to be a national title contender, it's going to be on Miller Kopp. And can he consistently knock down the 3 ball for them? And it just be able to like expand the court, make it wider for Trace Jackson Davis to go to work.
So, and again, the question is, we talk about with Creighton, we talk about it a little bit with UNC, we talk about it with Indiana and Virginia. Can they make this jump? Like, we're talking about a jump from a first 4 team to a potential top 3 seed. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, the jumps are the first 4 to like a 6 seed or a 7 seed. And then again, from year over year, like, I think we just know who they are. Like, I think we just know who they are.
Here's one take that I'll leave. And then this is a big, so don't get me wrong. This is a big if, because UNC did it. Indiana didn't. They got killed by St. Mary's. But you're looking at, like, if Indiana made a little bit of a run in the tournament, you're looking at Indiana getting the hype that UNC is getting right now. Again, that's a big if. UNC did it. Indiana didn't. I get that. I'm hearing you. But they bring back everybody. This is a team that was, what seed was North Carolina last year? 9? 8. So you're looking at, it's Indiana. I get them being a top 15 team in the country. I get the love. I get everything, but they could just not be good. That's why I also think that Illinois, you got Matthew Meyer, you got Terrence Shannon. I think that my top 3 in the Big Ten, I mean, I like Illinois and Iowa over Indiana, to be honest. I'm talking myself more and more into it. I'm probably going to cancel my Indiana Final Four take.
I would not disagree with that. Number 2, we're going to stick along with what we said. I think UNC is going to let down a little bit this year. So, like, they're probably, I would say I saw about 60 to 65% of people to pick UNC to win the title. I know UNC lost in the title game in 16, won it in 17. They're one of like 5 teams to lose in the title game and the next year just make a Final Four alone. And some of it's a little weird where you had like a Kentucky team lose in 14 and then you have the 15 class come in. Clee makes a good point here. It depends on Nance. What Brady Manick did was so valuable last year. Mm-hmm. That's part, like, the 2 main reasons that UNC made a run was Brady Manick being able to shoot, be such a mismatch that let Bacot do what Bacot does, and then Caleb Love figured it out. Can Caleb Love stay consistent? Can Davis stay consistent?
Yep.
I like what Leaky Black brings. Obviously, we know Bacot. Pete Nance was good at Northwestern. Now he's coming to Carolina. Yeah, Brian Thompson. Yeah, UNC is going to repeat what UCLA did last year. I think that's fair. And that's not a knock. That's not saying, like, they're bad. I have UNC as 5 in my preseason. And people were kind of like losing their minds on me because I didn't have them 1. Well, I saw 30 games where they looked like an 8 seed. And then I saw 5 games where they looked like a 2 seed or a 1 seed. So, yeah, I'm going to go with my gut on the 30 games and say that while Nance is good, it's a downgrade from what Manic brought. And the bracket also broke for them last year. Yeah, you can only beat who's in front of you, and they beat Baylor. But I don't hate that. So I think they let down. And by let down, I mean I still think they're going to be a top 2 or 3 seed. I don't think they're going to be the runaway favorite like so many people are kind of penciling them in at right now.
Well, yeah, if you also take away UNC and you make it Eastern Michigan and they went on the run last year as like a 9 seed, everyone would be like, well, it's probably like a fluke. The fact that it was North Carolina losing in the title game, everyone thinks that it has a little bit more.
Yeah, or let's say it's like San Diego State.
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
let's say San Diego State makes a run. I had them at 13. I was one of the highest people on San Diego State this year. But I don't think people put them San Diego State as like a lock to a 1. They probably put them at like 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And they return a lot. They return Matt Bradley and Mensa and bringing Damian Trammell. So it's like, okay, it kind of mimics what UNC is doing, not to the degree, obviously, not to the talent,
Exactly.
but if they made the run, nobody would put them 1. So I don't think it's unfair to say that UNC will be a bit of a letdown. Same note, I think Nova struggles this year. Mostly because they're not healthy. Justin Moore's hurt. He obviously ruptured his Achilles last year. That was brutal to watch. Cam Whitmore, who I think is a fucking awesome player, is missing time. He's missing tonight's game. Bringing Kyle Neptune. Like, there's a lot of questions with what Nova is going to be this year. Again, I'm blindly trusting Nova. I have them 15 in my rankings, but I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle a little bit. So that's my third season-long take. 4, we'll go the opposite way. In the Big East, I think the most slept-on team in the country is Butler. They made the biggest coaching upgrade of the year from Laval Jordan, bringing back Thad Matta. I know he's been out of the game a little bit, but he's still Thad Matta. Thad Matta, you bring in 3 guys from the transfer portal, Ali, Manny Bates, and Aaron Thompson from Purdue. So, or not Aaron Thompson. I'm blanking on that's the Butler's guy from last year. But the kid from Purdue, if all 3 of those guys are healthy, Manny Bates is a game changer. I like, and you still have Chuck Harris from last year, who's a damn good scorer. He's a guy that doesn't have to be the guy now, but he can be the leading scorer without having to push too much. So I think Butler's the most slept on team, maybe probably in the country. And then 5, I said it earlier, Keontae George is going to be an All-American. Because I think Baylor's the best team in the country. I think Keontae George is a large reason why I think Keontae George makes an All-American team.
Yeah, I think that he's gonna he is the factor for how far Baylor goes this year. Because obviously the guard play with Cryer and Flagler, we know what they can do.
Yeah, I agree. So those are my 5 season-long takes. We'll monitor them as it goes on. Now, one segment I want to do, one quick thing I want to do each show. Like I said, we're going to try to have guests. Sometimes it'll just be me. Sometimes it'll just be me and Dukes. Rico, Marty, Nadu, whoever, whether inside Barstool, outside Barstool, want to come on, more than welcome. I have an unpopular opinion. I'm going to have multiple popular opinions. And one day I'm going to mention, each day I'm going to mention my unpopular opinion. And I want you to yell at me and tell me why I'm dumb. UNC doesn't have the best jerseys in the game. Everyone loves talking about UNC's jerseys. They say they're the best jerseys in all sports. I think UCLA has better jerseys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we're going off UCLA or UNC, I think that UCLA definitely has better jerseys.
I love the blue and gold. I love the gold. I can't help it.
I do too. I don't think that UNC has the best jerseys either. So I can't call you stupid because I happen to agree with your take.
All right. So that's my unpopular opinion. Like I said, we're going to do the show 2 times a week during football, 11 a.m., Tuesdays, Thursdays going forward. This week will be Monday, Friday, just because of the way the slate of games fall.
Yeah.
Once football ends, we'll do 3 times. Like I said, sometimes it'll just be me. Sometimes it'll be me and Dukes. Rico, Jake, Marty, Nadu, Brandon, Megan, Kelly, whoever, all welcome on. We'll try to have, guests on to go back and forth. But the show is going to kind of follow this format, 30 to 45 minutes. Obviously, we won't talk about futures as much in the future. But best bets, biggest games of the day. Today's there's really not many. I think the best games we mentioned, George Mason at Auburn, South Dakota State at Akron, Memphis at Vanderbilt are the 3 games that I think are the best today. Maybe even Penn at Iona. And then we'll just run through that. So, and chat questions. So, we tried to interact as much as possible in the chat. People wanted thoughts on Arkansas. I think they're good. I think Nick Smith is a top 5 NBA talent. He's right there with Keontae George in terms of best freshman, I think, this year. I want to see the Duke guys. I know they're a little banged up, Whitehead, Lively, but I think those two, I really, really like their games, and they're slept on a little bit. I have Arkansas in the top 10. I think they're going to be ugly to start, but because they have so many transfers and like a guy like Nick Smith, and they're bringing in, 3 5-star freshmen. So, but Musselman is somewhat similar to Calipari, where he's used to bringing in new teams. You'll learn on the fly, and then come February, you'll look the part. So that's kind of what I think about Arkansas this year. Michael Ball asked that one. I wouldn't be afraid to fade them somewhat early in the year, and then bet on them right as you see them starting to turn in. And it might be in a loss, but you can see Arkansas's, the Kentuckys, the Dukes of the world. You can see when they figure it out. That's what you got to watch for. I'll try to point it out if I see it as well.
Yeah,
Brian Thompson. Go ahead.
No, I think the Duke freshmen are going to be insane. And also, when you're looking at Musselman last year, what he did, he lost to Hofstra and they made the Elite Eight. Right. They had a rough start to the season. So, Musselman can put together the group. Transfers, freshmen, doesn't matter. Arkansas will get it right by 20 time.
Brian Thompson asked, will Manhattan win a single game this year? I hope not. The whole thing's fucked up. Obviously, we don't know the entire story. The AD and Masiello did not like each other, but he had a year left on his contract. And really screw the kids by getting rid of your coach 2 weeks before the season starts. Jose Perez already hit the transfer portal. He was the MAAC preseason player of the year. Another starter hit the transfer portal, I believe, already. Listen, I feel bad for the kids. I saw an assistant coach isn't coaching this year because he's so pissed off at the university. So
I saw that. Listen,
Hartford's in the same boat. Manhattan's in the same boat. I feel bad for the players. I feel bad for the coaching staff. But fuck the administration. I hope you don't win a game. Scott Newman just bet Texas A&M 150-1. Probably won't win. Hope they go on a run. Really impressed with how they finished the season last year. Part of me fucking hates Texas A&M. And it's because they are the reason that Greg Sankey wants to change the NCAA tournament. That and money. I agree that A&M was impressive in the SEC tournament. I agree that A&M shouldn't have been in the NCAA tournament because they lost too many games during the year. We have 30 games. Win more. It's that goddamn simple. So part of me has a hatred for A&M, not just because of the Colt. It's because it's going to ruin my NCAA tournament and ruin my happiness. And I'm an old cranky man who likes things the way it is. So yeah, Scott, A&M 150-1 probably won't win. Again, look to see if you can bet I know right now in Barstool Sportsbook, we have the Final Four odds. As we get later in the year, I know this Barstool Sportsbook will add seeding and to win regions and everything like that. You may be able to get a better bet in later in the year, but it's all, futures is so much guessing in terms of who's healthy and everything like that. So, yeah. And Clee says Duke's freshmen are always awesome, but they don't win. Zion, RJ, Reddish. Yeah, it's because the NCAA tournament is one game. I mean, I live this life as a Kentucky fan. I've seen 2015, that Kentucky team fell on the wrong side of the bracket, where in the Final Four, if they play Duke, or if Duke plays Wisconsin in the Final Four, Kentucky plays Michigan State, Kentucky's beating Duke in that title game. I will die on that hill after I die. My sons will carry that on as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I agree. You have to be a little weary of freshmen, but when you're looking at season-long bets, it's worth kind of looking at their odds in terms of, is this the best I can get? So
it's also
that's what we have.
Also, just one thing about the Zion RJ Reddish thing. That team was still good. That's one take I want to die on is people like to just be like, oh, they weren't good because they lost in the tournament. That does not mean that they weren't good. That was a very, very good team. Zion and college,
I mean,
probably the best player I've seen in my lifetime.
He's up there. I don't know if Zion's the best player I've seen in my lifetime. Obviously, I'm older than you. I can go back to the 90s. I don't think he was better than Duncan. Even a Joe Smith was so dominant at Maryland in 95. And then even early 2000s, I think Jay Williams might be the best player I've seen from the 2000s. Beasley, Zion reminds me of Beasley. Durant was fucking awesome. Anthony Davis. John Wall was such a game changer. Like, there's a long list of players. Zion's in the short list. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
I don't know if he's the best I've ever seen though. I don't know if he's the best I've ever seen at Duke. And like Leitner was a different. I was a little too young to really embrace Leitner. But I mean, it's so hard to also judge like 4-year careers to 1-year career.
Yep.
So that's what we have. So this is the premise of the show. This was our startup show. Like I said, it's my show. This is everyone's welcome on. This isn't a knock against anything. I just am finding different ways to cover the sport. I will be blogging my ass off. TikTok, Twitter, I should say, tweets, and then the show. So we'll see everybody on Friday again, 11 a.m. And we'll see if somebody wants to come on. If not, you'll look at me and probably Dukes again.
See you guys.